6:42 a.m., October 24th, 1943. Soviet sniper Lieutenant Igor Volkov peered through his PE scope. At the German lines, 340 meters away. He was good, very good. 47 confirmed kills in 3 months at the Nikopol Bridgehead. The political officers called him a hero of the Soviet Union in the making. His comrades simply knew him as the Invisible One. But this morning, something felt wrong. The German lines were too quiet, too empty. Normally there was movement. Soldiers shifting positions, smoke from cooking fires, the usual signs of life. Today, nothing. Volkov felt it, the prickling at the back of his neck, the icy chill in his gut. He wasn't the hunter, he was the prey. In the next 6 hours, 8 Soviet snipers, including Volkov himself, would die. All at the hands of the same German, a single man. A lance corporal who would elevate the art of sniping to a level that even seasoned Red Army commanders would deem impossible. His name, Josef Sepp Allerberger, 23 years old, from Brixen in the Thale Valley, Tyrol. With 257 total kills, he would go down in history as the second highest scoring German sniper of World War II. But on this day, he would demonstrate something more important than numbers. He would show how a single man can turn the hunters into the hunted. How patience becomes the deadliest weapon, and how the line between hunter and prey is thinner than the trigger pull of a Kar 98K rifle. Before we continue, if you haven't already subscribed, do it now. This channel needs 1,000 subscribers, currently at 500. Every subscription counts towards more documented stories like this. This is not a glorification of war. This is history, raw, documented, and terrifyingly real. Back to the story. To understand what happened in those 6 hours, we need to go back, not just to that morning, but to the place and the man himself, the Nikopol Bridgehead, October 1943, a strategic nightmare for both sides. The Germans held a curved front line on the Dnieper River. The Soviets pressed in from 3 sides: the terrain, flat land, scattered ruins, dead trees, shell craters. Perfect for snipers, deadly for anyone who moved. The Soviet tactic was simple and effective: sniper dominance. They positioned duos and trios in strategic locations. Any German soldier who dared to peek over the trench risked instant death. The Red Army had eliminated 34 German soldiers through sniper fire in recent weeks. Morale was plummeting. Josef Sepp Allerberger had arrived at this front on September 3, 1943. Born on December 5, 1924, in Brixen in the Thale Valley, a small village nestled in the Tyrolean Alps. His father was a mountain farmer. As a child, Sepp had hunted chamois, learned to wait motionless for hours, understood that patience was more important than speed. At 18, he was drafted, 144th Mountain Infantry Regiment, 3rd Mountain Division. The training was brutal, but Allerberger exceeded all expectations. His instructor, Captain Werner Schroeder, immediately recognized, "This boy has something you can't teach. He thinks like an animal, patient, ruthless, efficient." By October 24, 1943, Allerberger already had 89 confirmed kills. His Kar 98K rifle with the 4X Zeiss scope was an extension of his body. He knew every quirk of the weapon. The slight tendency to drift left in the wind, the precise trigger pull of 1.8 kilograms, the recoil that slammed back into his shoulder. But numbers weren't what drove Allerberger. It was something else. A cold, calculating logic. Every kill meant one less enemy. One less soldier killing his comrades, one less threat to the homeland. It wasn't hatred, it was functionality, like a mountain farmer eliminating predators to protect his herd. On this morning, his company commander, First Lieutenant Frank Dietrich, had summoned him. "Allerberger, "We have a problem." Dietrich pointed to a roughly drawn map. 8 red circles marked Soviet sniper positions. "These 8 have killed 11 of our men in the last 3 days. They're working in coordination. We can't move anymore. Can you do something?" Allerberger studied the map. The positions formed a pattern: overlapping fields of fire, withdrawal routes, communication lines. The Soviets were good. Very good. "I need 6 hours, and nobody is to move in Sector Charlie." Absolute silence. Dietrich nodded. "You have it. But Allerberger, be careful. These guys aren't green. They have experience." Allerberger didn't smile. He simply nodded, took his rifle, and disappeared into the ruins. What First Lieutenant Dietrich didn't know was that Allerberger had no plan to directly hunt the Soviet snipers. He had something far more dangerous in mind. He would use himself as bait, would trick the hunters into revealing their positions, and then he would eliminate them, one by one, a tactic that would later be taught as reverse hunting in sniper schools. But on this day, it was simply survival instinct. 6:47 a.m. Allerberger crawled through the ruins of a destroyed farmhouse. His movements were methodical, slow. Every inch was calculated. He carried his standard equipment: Kar 98K, 40 rounds of ammunition, a sniper camouflage cloak made of burlap and plant fibers, a homemade umbrella of branches and dead leaves to conceal him from above. That was Allerberger's secret. Most snipers only camouflage themselves from the front and sides. Allerberger camouflaged himself from above. Why? Because enemy snipers often look down from elevated positions. A shadow, an unnatural shape. That was enough to be spotted. He reached his first position, a shell crater. 280 meters from the German lines, right in no man's land. Suicide for most soldiers. For Allerberger, it was perfect geometry. From here, he could see 3 of the 8 Soviet positions. Not the snipers themselves, they were too well concealed. But he could identify their likely hiding places: a ruined barn, a fallen tree, a stack of bricks. Allerberger waited, didn't move, breathed slowly. His heartbeat slowed, a technique he had taught himself. When the heart beats slower, the body is calmer, the hand doesn't shake, the shot is more precise. 15 minutes passed, then 30, then 45. An inexperienced shooter would have become impatient, would have moved, would have betrayed his position. Allerberger was not an inexperienced shooter. 7:34 a.m. Movement. 340 meters away, near the destroyed barn, a brief flash, sunlight reflecting off glass, a scope. Allerberger didn't smile, but his brain registered. Target number 1, identified, Soviet sniper, position, barn, second window from the left, distance, 342 meters, but he didn't fire. Not yet. Why? Because snipers rarely worked alone. If he fired now, the other 7 would know his position. He might kill 1, but the other 7 would hunt him. No, he had to wait, had to make the Soviets think they were safe. 7:51 a.m. Allerberger did something crazy. He took off his helmet, put it on a stick, and slowly raised it above the edge of the crater. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. 3 seconds later, crack! A bullet slammed into the helmet. Allerberger dropped it. Watched where the shot came from? The barn. Second window from the left, just as expected. But now he knew something crucial. The Soviet sniper was nervous, had fired too quickly. An experienced sniper would have waited, would have recognized the trap. Allerberger waited another 12 minutes. Then he saw it. The Soviet sniper moved. Just a little. Maybe 4 inches. But it was enough. Allerberger saw the silhouette. the outline of a head behind the window frame. He raised his Kar 98K rifle, exhaled. His trigger finger rested gently on the trigger. No tension, just smooth pressure. 1.8 kilograms, like a caress. 8:12 a.m. Crack. The 7.92mm bullet left the barrel at 760 meters per second, flew 342 meters in 0.45 seconds. Hit the Soviet sniper directly in the head, 2 centimeters above the left eye. Lieutenant Igor Volkov, 47 kills, died instantly. He didn't even know where the shot came from. A brief flash, then blackness. Kill number 1 confirmed, 8:12 a.m., 7 remaining. But now the other 7 knew there was a German hunter, and he was good. The Soviet snipers reacted professionally. No panic, no hasty movements. They knew. Movement meant death. Allerberger could almost hear their thinking. Where is he? How did he find Volkov? Is he alone? What they didn't know. Allerberger had already identified their second position, and that position was much more dangerous. Because there, 2 snipers were working together, a shooter, a spotter, professional tactics. If Allerberger killed the shooter, the spotter would identify his position. If he killed the spotter, the shooter would fire back. Allerberger had to kill both. Within seconds, with 2 shots from 287 meters away, in shifting wind, impossible. Maybe, but he had no choice. 8:17 a.m. Allerberger had located the second position, an overturned tree, 287 meters northeast. 2 Soviet soldiers were lying there. He couldn't see them, but he knew they were there. Why? Because he understood the logic. After Volkov's death, the other snipers would become more cautious. They would pair up. One shooter focuses on aiming. The spotter watches the surroundings. Standard tactic. Allerberger crawled out of the crater inch by inch. His movements were so slow that even an observer with binoculars would have mistaken him for an optical illusion. It took him 20 minutes to crawl 15 meters to a new position, a shallow depression behind a dead tree stump. From here, he had a better angle on the overturned tree. And then he waited. Again. 30 minutes. Motionless. 8:51 a.m. The spotter made a mistake. A tiny mistake. He coughed once. A dry, short cough. And Allerberger saw the movement, the slight twitch of vegetation on the tree trunk. Position confirmed. Spotter. Left. Shooter. Right. Distance. 287 meters. But how could he kill both? If he killed the spotter first, the shooter would fire back. If he killed the shooter first, the spotter would identify his position and radio the other snipers. Allerberger decided on a tactic that was later described in his memoir, the double tap. He aimed at the shooter, exhaled, squeezed the trigger, crack. The bullet hit. The shooter twitched, fell to the side. Allerberger didn't reload. Normally, a sniper would pull the bolt after each shot, ejecting the empty casing and chambering a new round. But Allerberger had developed a special technique. He reloaded while aiming. His right hand worked the bolt while his left hand stabilized the rifle. His eye never left the scope. 2.3 seconds after the first shot, crack. The spotter, who was just trying to identify where the first shot had come from, fell backwards, hit directly in the chest. Kill number 2 and number 3 confirmed. 9:03 a.m. 5 remaining, but now Allerberger was in danger. The other 5 snipers had heard the shots, could calculate the approximate direction. His position was compromised. He had exactly 90 seconds before enemy artillery would bombard the area. That was the standard response time for Soviet units. Allerberger crawled backwards, faster now. No longer slow and methodical, he had to gain distance, 40 meters in 75 seconds. He reached a destroyed house, threw himself into the basement. 9:05 a.m. Boom, boom, boom. Soviet 76 mm artillery hammered the depression where he had been lying. Earth, stones, and metal fragments flew through the air. If he had stayed there, he would be dead now. Allerberger waited. The bombardment lasted 3 minutes. Then silence. He knew the Soviets would think they had killed him, would be more careful, but also a little more relaxed. That was his advantage. 9:34 a.m. Allerberger moved again, this time in a completely different direction, southward, away from his last known position. The Soviets expected him to flee back to the German lines. Instead, he moved parallel to the front, deeper into no man's land, a tactic that even his own commander would have considered insane. 9:45 a.m. Allerberger had taken up a new position. A destroyed Soviet T-34 tank, 420 meters from the German lines. The Soviets had abandoned it weeks ago. The wreck lay on its side, half buried. Allerberger crawled into the turret. The position was perfect. From here, he could see 3 more potential sniper hides. But more importantly, the Soviets would never expect a German sniper to hide in a Soviet tank. It was psychologically counterintuitive. This was reverse hunting, thinking like the prey, acting like the hunter. 10:12 a.m. Allerberger spotted movement, 380 meters away. A Soviet sniper was changing positions. A short sprint from one ruin to the next, maybe 4 seconds of movement. Allerberger had no time to aim. He had to shoot instinctively. He swung the Kar 98K rifle, aimed at the motion, leading the target by about a meter, and squeezed the trigger. Crack! The bullet struck the Soviet soldier in full stride. He stumbled, fell, and didn't move again. Kill number 4 confirmed. 10:12 a.m. 4 remaining. Allerberger reloaded and waited. The other 4 would now know the German sniper wasn't dead. He was still out there. But where? 10:47 a.m. A Soviet sniper made a fatal mistake. He tried to identify Allerberger's position by moving and observing, a classic search technique. But Allerberger was already 1 step ahead. He had calculated the most likely observation point, a stack of bricks, 310 meters northwest. And he had his rifle trained right on it, waiting. As the Soviet's head appeared over the bricks, just for a second to peek, Allerberger was ready. Crack! Kill number 5 confirmed. 10:48 a.m. 3 remaining. Now it was getting critical. The last 3 Soviet snipers were the most experienced. They had watched their 5 comrades die, had studied Allerberger's patterns. They wouldn't make the same mistakes. And then something happened that Allerberger didn't expect. The 3 remaining snipers started to actively hunt. Not waiting defensively, but searching offensively. They had seen his last muzzle flash, knew his approximate position, and they were closing the ring. For the first time that day, Allerberger was not the hunter, he was the hunted. Current status, 500 subscribers, 16,000 hours of viewing time. If you want to watch regularly, subscribe now. Every subscription counts. On with the story, because now it's becoming a duel to the death. 11:02 a.m. Allerberger noticed the change immediately. The birds, the few birds that still lived in this devastated area, were taking flight, northeast, then southwest, then west. That meant movement, coordinated movement. The 3 remaining snipers were maneuvering. Allerberger made a quick tactical assessment. He was surrounded, 3 enemies who knew his position. If he stayed in the tank, they'd find him. If he moved, they'd see him. He had to do the unexpected. Again, Allerberger left the tank, but not toward the German lines, but straight toward the Soviet positions. A suicide maneuver for any normal soldier. For Allerberger, it was psychological warfare. The Soviets expected him to flee, to crawl back to safety. No one willingly moves closer to the enemy. 11:18 a.m. Allerberger reached a position that was so absurd it became genius. A small trench, only 180 meters from a Soviet infantry line. So close that he could hear the voices of the Soviet soldiers, so close that no sniper would expect to find a German. From here, he had a perfect angle of view of the areas where the 3 snipers had been searching for him. 11:29 a.m. He saw the 6th one, a Soviet sniper carefully crawling toward the abandoned tank. The man was good, using every bit of cover, moving in short, quick sprints. But he made one mistake. He was focused on the tank. Expecting Allerberger to be there, not looking in the direction from which the real threat came, Allerberger waited until the Soviet stopped. A pause to breathe. 3 seconds of stillness. Crack! Kill number 6 confirmed. 11:30 a.m. 2 remaining. Now the last 2 reacted immediately. Allerberger heard it. The characteristic sound of a Kar 98K-like rifle. But it wasn't a Kar 98K, it was a Soviet Mosin Nagant. A crack! A bullet struck 30 centimeters to the left of his head. Dirt sprayed. The sniper had seen his muzzle flash and had fired back. Quickly. Too quickly. Allerberger didn't move, didn't breathe. This was the moment. The sniper had betrayed his position. Allerberger had seen the muzzle flash, 267 meters northwest, behind an overturned cart. He aimed, but he didn't shoot immediately. Why? Because he knew. If he shot now, the 8th one, the last one, would definitively know his position. He had to wait, had to make the 7th one move. 5 minutes passed. Then 10, 11:43 a.m. The Soviet sniper made the mistake. Thought Allerberger was hit or had fled, moved slightly, only 20 centimeters, but enough. Crack. Kill number 7 confirmed. 11:44 a.m. 1 remaining. Now it was 1-on-1. The last Soviet sniper against Allerberger, and this last one was the best of all. Silence fell over the battlefield. Even the artillery had stopped firing, as if both sides knew this was a duel, and duels demand respect. 11:51 a.m. Allerberger knew. The 8th sniper was different, hadn't made the mistakes of the others, hadn't panicked and fired back, hadn't betrayed his position. That meant this man was a veteran, had experience, knew that patience was the most important weapon. For 47 minutes, nothing happened. 2 men, both invisible, both waiting, both knowing that the first movement could mean death. 12:17 p.m. Allerberger felt it. A feeling, instinct. The 8th sniper was close, very close, somewhere within 150 meters. But where? He analyzed the surroundings with his eyes, not through the scope. That would restrict his field of vision too much. With the naked eye, looking for irregularities, for shadows that didn't fit, for shapes that were too geometric. And then he saw it, a depression, 147 meters northeast, too perfect, too neat, no loose stones, no vegetation, as if someone had prepared the area. Allerberger pointed his Kar 98K at the depression, but he saw no one, only dirt and stones. He waited. 15 minutes. 20 minutes. 12:38 p.m. Then it happened. A gust of wind, and for a second, a single second, something moved in the depression. Camouflage netting, camouflaged vegetation moved by the wind. Allerberger saw the shape beneath it, a human outline. He aimed, but not at the head. Why? Because the sniper was too well camouflaged. The headshot was uncertain. Instead, Allerberger aimed for the center of the mass, where the torso had to be. A body shot was less immediately fatal, but safer to hit. Allerberger exhaled and squeezed the trigger. Crack! The bullet tore through the camouflage netting and struck. For a moment, nothing. Then movement. The Soviet gunner rolled to the side, wounded, but alive. Allerberger reloaded and aimed again. The Soviet tried to raise his own rifle. Despite the wound, despite the pain, a veteran to the end. Crack! The second shot ended it. Kill number 8 confirmed, 12:39 p.m., 0 remaining. Silence. Allerberger lay motionless in the trench, breathing shallowly. His heart raced. Adrenaline, exhaustion, and something else, something he couldn't name. 6 hours, 8 men, all dead. And he felt nothing. No joy, no triumph, just an empty, cold functionality. He had done a job, had eliminated threats, had protected his comrades. But at what cost? What Allerberger didn't know at that moment was that the Soviet side had been watching everything, commissars with binoculars, and they had made a decision that would change Allerberger's life forever. To be honest, the channel needs 1,000 subscribers to continue to grow. Currently, we're at 500. If you enjoy this detailed historical work, please subscribe now. Every subscription brings us closer to more archival research and deeper documentations. Now, back to the legacy of this day. 1:47 p.m. Allerberger crawled back to the German lines. It took over an hour. His muscles ached. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from pure physical exhaustion. As he reached the German trenches, the soldiers stared at him. First, Lieutenant Frank Dietrich came personally. Allerberger, we saw movement. Did you? All 8. Dietrich was silent, staring. Then he nodded, slowly. Radio intelligence intercepted Soviet communication. They're calling you the Ghost of Nikopol now. They've received orders. Any soldier who identifies and kills you will receive an Order of the Red Banner. Allerberger nodded. No reaction, no emotion. He went to his dugout and methodically cleaned his Kar 98K rifle. Oil, rag, every component perfectly maintained. The rifle had saved his life. He owed it respect. But that night, Allerberger wrote something in his diary, something that was later published. 8 men today. All were snipers. All had families. All were just doing their job, as I am doing mine. I feel no hate. I feel emptiness, like a farmer killing wolves to protect his sheep. Necessary, but not glorious. Today was not a victory. Today was survival. Mine, not theirs. That is all. The Soviet reaction to that October 24, 1943, was documented. General Vasily Chuikov, commander of the 8th Guards Army, wrote in a later published report, "A single German sniper eliminated 8 of our best marksmen in 6 hours. The psychological impact was devastating. Our men refused to take on sniper duties. We had to change the entire tactics in that sector." The German side reacted differently. Allerberger wasn't showered with medals, no Knight's Cross, no propaganda photos. Why? Because the Wehrmacht already knew in 1943 the war was lost. Heroics were irrelevant. Survival was everything. Allerberger himself continued his work. By the end of the war in May 1945, he would reach 257 confirmed kills, the second highest German sniper of World War II, only surpassed by his friend and comrade Matthew Hetzenauer with 345 kills. But numbers don't tell the whole story. After the war, Allerberger returned to Brixen in the Thale Valley. Worked for the Austrian post office for 37 years, a quiet, friendly man, rarely spoke about the war. When asked, he only said, "I did what was necessary, no more, no less." In 1982, a historian, Dr. Roland Kaltenegger, interviewed him and asked about that day at the Nikopol Bridgehead. Allerberger replied, "The 8 men I killed that day were not monsters. They were soldiers, good soldiers. Under different circumstances, we could have been friends, but war allows no friendship." Only survival or death. I chose survival. They died for it. That is not just, but war is never just. Josef Sepp Allerberger died on December 5, 2004, in Brixen in the Thale Valley. 80 years old, peacefully, surrounded by family. At his funeral, there were 3 men present who no one expected, 3 old men speaking Russian. They didn't introduce themselves, laid flowers on the grave, and left. It was later learned they were former Soviet soldiers who had fought at the Nikopol Bridgehead, who had watched Allerberger's actions from a distance. They didn't come to celebrate. They came to honor a warrior, a man who had done his duty as they had done theirs. Modern military historians have analyzed October 24, 1943. Dr. Martin Pegler, an expert in sniper warfare, wrote in 2006, Allerberger's performance that day demonstrates the pinnacle of what a single marksman can achieve. But more importantly, it shows the psychological dimension of sniping. It wasn't just physical precision. It was mental warfare, patience, tactics, the ability to think like the enemy. These principles are still taught in sniper schools worldwide today. The reverse hunting tactic that Allerberger perfected that day is now standard teaching material in U.S. Army Sniper School, Fort Benning, British Army Sniper Division, Israeli Defense Forces, German Bundeswehr Einzelkämpfer Ausbildung. But what is the real lesson? Maybe it's not the tactics. Maybe it's what Allerberger himself said. War doesn't make heroes. War only makes survivors and the dead. I was a survivor. The other 8 were not. That is not an achievement. That is a tragedy. At the Nikopol Bridgehead, October 24, 1943, 8 Soviet soldiers died. Their names: 1. Lieutenant Igor Volkov, 24 years old. Moscow, 2. Lance Corporal Anton Kuznetsov, 22 years old, Leningrad 3. Lance Corporal Dmitry Sokolov, 23 years old, Stalingrad 4. Sergeant Alexei Popov, 26 years old, Kiev 5. Lance Corporal Ivan Petrov, 21 years old, Minsk 6. Lieutenant Nikolai Ivanov, 27 years old, Odessa 7. Lance Corporal Sergei Orlov, 23 years old, Warsaw 8. Captain Yuri Fedorov, 31 years old, Sevastopol. All had families, all had dreams, all died because they were ordered to fight, just as Allerberger was ordered to fight. This is the reality of war. There are no glorious victories, only necessary tragedies. And the question that remains is this: how many men like Allerberger and Volkov and the other 6 could have been friends had history taken a different course? We will never know. What we do know is this: on that day in October of 1943, a young Tyrolean showed what human capability under extreme pressure can achieve. But he also showed the price, not just for the dead, but for the one who survived. These aren't just statistics from dusty archives. These are the moments that decided the fate of millions. Real soldiers, real decisions, real consequences. These stories must never be forgotten. If these historical truths are important to you, then support us with YouTube's Super Thanks, the golden heart below. Every Super Thanks enables me to spend weeks in archives, digitizing rare documents, interviewing the last remaining witnesses. History must be preserved. Help make it happen.